everyone. We're here to talk about influencer marketing. And I just want to kind of set the scene before I hand over to the wonderful panel we've got with us. A question. Really, has the enfant terrible of the digital marketing mix really started to grow up? Has the spotty-faced, rebellious teenagers that started showing signs of teenage angst started wearing baggy jeans and high-top trainers and a baseball cap? Or is it about to attend its secondary school leavers ball looking wonderful in a ball gown? I hope that's enough of the analogy. I want to talk about influencer marketing, and I actually think, and I'm here to make something of a case, that it's matured, and it's matured to become a standalone digital art in the digital marketing mix. And I also want to talk to the brilliant panel here about how to get the best from it and the science behind it. Luckily, it's not just me. I'm James from Social Circle. We have both a platform and a managed service that deliver influencer marketing campaigns. But brilliantly, we've got somebody from every step of the food chain here. We've got Danny from a management company. We've got Lauren from a brand. We've got Fleur, who's a real-life creator and YouTube royalty. And we've got Lauren from Essence, a digital agency, who looks after content. So this is the brilliant panel. Let's start. Let's get into it. So let's start first of all. Lauren, we'll come to you first, if that's all right. What role does influencer marketing play in your strategy? What does it do for your brand?
So we create a lot of content with influencers. That's incredibly important to us. Also, social growth is very important. Of course, sales. And also our consumer lives on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter more than probably any other kind of business. So we can start conversations with them and maintain conversations. And we can also reach our consumer very, very quickly. We are a fast fashion company, so we can sign deals in the morning and have content out in the afternoon, which is really quite incredible.
Indeed. Danny, I'll come to you next.
Yeah.
What role should influencer marketing play? What job should it be doing?
So I think from a talent perspective, and when it's done well, I think influencer marketing can be used by influencers to solidify their brand. They can work with brands that mean something and that align with their brand. And I think that's a way of fortifying their own brand they're creating. And then the more obvious benefit, I suppose, for the talent is that it's a resource to allow them to create the content they do editorially and naturally as well.
Okay. Laura, I want to get a wider perspective from a broader digital mix. What job can and what job should influencer marketing do?
Well, I suppose from a wider perspective, I think you always have to have and we've just been talking about this backstage, a really clear purpose of it within the wider marketing mix, because it can deliver perception change, it can deliver sales, it can grow your own social community. So I think where the challenge is making sure you're really clear on what its role is within the wider marketing mix and actually the impact that it can have on your social channels, on your real world experiences, even through to your display advertising. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And Fleur, are you aware who's on the end of a brief, whether it's a PR brief or a marketing brief or a direct response brief? How does it work?
I'm usually aware of it. I actually don't deal with it directly anymore, as we were talking earlier. Yeah. we first met, however many years ago?
7 years ago.
Yeah, 7 years ago. I am, especially when it comes from PR, because I have a relationship most of the time with the PR from a release point of view as well. But it's more so about how well put together the brief is in terms of, how involved I have to get with going back and forth and talking about, hang on a minute, this isn't going to work, where does this come from?
Name and shame, Fleur.
No,
Who's
I'm not
worse?
gonna name
The
and shame.
PR's worse? Do you still get asked for stuff for free?
No, and this is something that this is the one question I had about all of the questions we got sent in advance, and I brought up with you this morning, was, what do you mean by this? Do you mean, that it's a brief coming from a PR saying, I'll give you a lipstick in exchange for content? And I was like, but that just doesn't happen anymore, and you guys seem to disagree with me on that. In terms of that, it just, for me, it doesn't happen anymore. Maybe it does for smaller influencers, but I don't tend to get that kind of contact really anymore. You were thinking that I would say that I do, right?
I'm aware that it happens.
Okay.
There's definitely still people asking for free content, and sometimes if the PR relationship works, then I think that's probably justified, you know. So, but I think other times, yeah, a free mattress doesn't pay the bills, does it? That's what I'm saying.
No, but it does happen. It does happen,
Yeah.
but if it's a serious conversation, for it to be called a brief and for there to be an agreement like that,
Fair
I think it's a very grey area though with freebies, and it's a whole nother conversation, I think.
Okay, panel.
Be here all day.
Time to show off a bit now, panel. Give us an example of a campaign you've worked on that you're incredibly proud of, and tell us why. Danny, let's start with you.
So one that I was really proud of quite recently was with Google Pixel Book. And it was part of a narrative series we put out with one of our YouTubers who had typically been like a fitness YouTuber for like 6 years. And as part of him growing up, being in his early 30s, having a family, he wanted help repositioning. So that's what we've been spending the last year or so doing. And we've done this with this series of content called Dad Life, which is like an 8-episodic series looking into the like real challenges of a normal dad. And Google Pixel Book at the time, the messaging aligned perfectly with what one of the episodes of that kind of story arc was saying. And so that was just such an effective project to work on. It was also, he was joined by like some really top YouTubers in that same campaign. So that was a real win to show like the power of repositioning and how a YouTuber can kind of grow and change over time.
Nice. Lauren, what about you?
Well, I'm immensely proud of everything that we've done. We do so many different influencer campaigns, but we have just launched our partnership with Love Island, which we, of course, decided to do after looking at the huge influence that the individuals had after last year's phenomenal season. This partnership will evolve into an influencer campaign, and we are using influencers really to enhance our messaging throughout the season of Love Island. It really is something that we're very proud of, and it's very exciting.
And how will that campaign look on paper? Forgive me, a bit of a Love Island joke. No, what I mean is, how are you measuring results? How will it be proved effective?
We are learning a lot while we're doing this. As I was saying, I'm actually missing some of those big meetings today because the season only launched on Monday. So we're having to be incredibly reactive. There actually wasn't a lot of planning beforehand because we are dealing here with people who are building their influence over 8 weeks. So I really think that we're going to kind of be playing it by ear until we realise who's in love and who's not in love.
Fleur, what about you? What's a campaign that you've worked on that you're immensely proud of?
I'm not going to give you like a singular answer because I sat down and thought about this and I was like, I'm terrible at thinking about things in advance, but I did this time because I've been caught out too many times by this kind of question. And I think for me, it's separated into 2 camps in terms of pride. There's one that is very much the brands that I've worked with that I personally am very proud to be able to say that I've worked with for the last year, MAC, Dior, Givenchy. Obviously, kind of as a creator, it is amazing to be collaborating with brands like that. But actually, a lot of the individual campaigns that I'm most proud of are, I feel that way because of everything that's happened over the past kind of almost 10 years I've been doing YouTube, is the way that they're kind of born and the way that they've developed into very kind of conversational projects. So if it's a longer term project, an example I'm working on at the moment is with Very. And when I look back at how things developed when I first started making content to now and how open-minded brands are now in comparison, that's what makes me most proud because you get to see how everything or what was expected of you back in the days of we'll give you a free mattress, lipstick, whatever in exchange for whatever, to now where it's we totally trust you with this, what's your creative input, and then it's a conversation. They tend to be the ones that I'm most proud of and happiest and I feel most fulfilled by when I've completed them.
So digital marketers and brand marketers are letting go. They're relinquishing some control and trusting you with that messaging.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily new. Like there are certain brands that have been doing that for years, but it's newly widespread, I would say, and they're the best ones for me.
Laura, what about you?
I think it's about nearly 2 years ago, we worked with Dodie on Chubba Chups. And she's a music influencer across YouTube, Instagram. And I think for us, the campaign delivered phenomenally well. She created a music video with a cover of I Want Candy and had obviously Chubba Chups she'd used in her music video, totally her own design, etc. And smashed all the sort of benchmarks that we'd be looking for. But I think the reason why we were so proud of it was because the community, how they reacted. Like there was quotes underneath going, this should be the new definition of advertising, this is inventive, love this. And then they started creating sort of pop art versions and images of Dodie with Chubba Chups interwoven into it. And then we sponsored her music tour in the real world, which generated loads of social content for us. And resulted when she got up on stage, everyone chanting #ad, which was quite, it was just in a really positive way, because it's kind of totally transparent, the relationship, but it added value to the audience experiences, and they loved it. And I think that's ultimately we've got to strive for that positivity.
Yeah, I think the other great thing, because I remember seeing that campaign, if anybody also have a look at Dodie's cover of Lollipop by Mika, that was the next one, that was amazing. And most of the comments under Mika's version of it are Dodie sent me here, so that's kind of the power of that asset.
Yeah.
But also the tour was amazing because it was the brand that gave that tour to Dodie's fans in many ways.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, let's move on a little bit and let's go to be negative and let's go to be cynical, shall we? Danny, we pride ourselves at Social Circle about being kind of a creator-first business. We understand how important creators, influencers are. When do agencies and brands, and when do people get it wrong? What are the pitfalls that people make?
I think there's lots of confusion around what authenticity means. It's a word that everyone seems to say when we're talking about influencers, but then it's often just not backed up. So I think authenticity is about being truthful, and then you'll have have another conversation with the same person about kind of trying to hide the fact that it's an ad, or not necessarily so explicitly, but then wanting to have like real control over creative, which I'm empathetic towards, but I think. It's a real contradiction, and if we can all agree that authenticity is key, I think there's not enough action that kind of backs that up, just in general with the briefs that we're seeing.
Okay, Lauren, let's come to you next. Shoes on the other foot. Where do creators get it wrong, or where do people more broadly get it wrong?
I feel that people want to just jump on influencers for numbers, not for an actual brand match. We are constantly at MissGuided. We really know who we are, and we know who our customers want to follow, and we're trying to find that MissGuided girl. And we work with influencers with 5 million followers and girls that have 1,000 followers, because we believe that they are MissGuided girls and they will resonate with our audience and they will create really, really amazing content for us. As soon as you try and get that square peg into a round hole, you are going to start struggling. It's going to just look fake. So that's one thing that we are really clear about as a business, that they have to be that MissGuided girl who is empowered, who loves the way she looks, and who knows who she is. And I think all brands need to really learn to do that.
Sure. Fleur, where do you see, what are the common pitfalls? Where do you see it going wrong?
I think I've already mentioned the conversational aspect of it, and I think that's been true for a very long time, is that the best briefs come from having a conversation with the person that you want to work with and working out whether you're aligned in terms of content and whether they can deliver. I think looking at, you mentioned just looking at numbers, but actually asking for insight, because a lot of the time if people will hide behind, say, like an outer shell of numbers, but not necessarily share all of your numbers with people. And that, like, if a brand wants to work with me, like, I'm very, very open with kind of how much I share in terms of who it's reaching and things like that. I think that's really, really important. And if people are being shady, then I think that's kind of, or not sharing, I think that's an alarm bell.
Absolutely. I think if brands or agencies don't ask for the data, then something's gone wrong. And if people are willing to share, that's something going even more wrong.
Yeah, so that's always, I'm kind of like jumping between the sides in terms of like,
No, that's perfect.
you're asking for the pitfalls, so I'm like all over the shop. And then I think having too detailed a brief is another thing that it fits hand in hand with what you're saying about choosing the right people and, you know, making sure they're the right fit for the brand, but also, you know, being a bit more open-minded until you've had that conversation. I think that's the main thing for me. And when brands are more open and, you know, want to meet with you and discuss with you what content you're making, especially if it's a longer-term relationship rather than just a one-off, for me that's like the dream, because you can get involved and, yeah.
Laura, where do you think the process goes wrong? What are the pitfalls that you've seen?
I think the pitfalls are when there isn't a clear purpose and everyone thinks they should just be doing influencer marketing, and then suddenly halfway through the client starts saying, but the product needs to be at the centre. And it's like, that's fine, but that's not content, then that's advertising. And so we need to sort of move on from that. I think the other pitfall of the industry as a whole actually is the commoditisation of it. I think there's lots of dashboards out there, there's lots of influencer marketing companies out there.
Yeah.
They don't have exclusivity of the talent. You know, it's very saturated, and there's a lot of people going out and selling it as in just plug in your brief, pop it on here, and you'll get this scale. And I think that totally undervalues the point of doing influencer marketing personally.
No, I'm with you. I think it's the difference between the creation of lots of social content and what perhaps we would call influencer marketing.
Yeah.
If you just, there's a place for making lots of pretty pictures, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's about that ongoing relationship, I suppose, and the content resulting from it.
And I think probably the other pitfall is some of these influencers that were earning, particularly in the gaming space, or 40,000 and stuff like that. I think you always got to be ready to pick them up out of their flat in East London at 1 o'clock for the shoot at 2, because you know they're not going to get there themselves. So some of them aren't as professional as they should be.
Yeah.
I think
From experience.
as well, for all the talk there is about the growth of influencer marketing, I'm honestly not seeing that much influencer marketing as much as influencer media buying or influencer advertising. And I think what we see is like someone will, an agency or a brand will create this campaign and then say, oh, let's amplify it with influencers, or let's attach influencers at the end. I think influencers need to be part of the strategic creative at the very beginning, otherwise it's not going to be a very interesting campaign. Yeah, and I think there's far too much. Some of the negative examples we see of influencer marketing is often, I don't think, really influencer marketing. I think it's much more just like a media spend. And the value of influencers is not just in the impressions or the numbers. It's completely wrong.
Yeah.
I completely agree. We try and incorporate influencers in all of our campaigns now. And we'll work with influencers with very small numbers, but who have got something to say. With our International Women's Day campaign, we work with 35 influencers talking about what International Women's Day means to them. It is a way of starting conversation at the beginning, not at the end, and sharing content at different points across the journey.
Okay. Look, the whole theme of the IAB Engage is about moving forward, so let's do a little bit of future gazing before we wrap up. How's this influencer marketing space going to change over the next 12 months? What's the one thing that we can look at? Danny, let's start with you.
So to me, it's podcasts. I think we'll see like a bunch of influencers do podcasts as we are now. Then I think a little bit further down the line, we'll see influencers doing good podcasts. And I think with a real strategy and not just kind of interviewing some mates and press and record and uploading. So I think podcasts are obviously really interesting right now, and so I think the intersection of influencers and podcasts could be really interesting.
Cool. Laura?
The next 12 months.
What's going to shift? What's going to change? What should we look out for in influencer marketing over the next 12 months?
I mean, I still very much feel like it's the Wild West out there.
Do you?
Yeah, I'm never quite sure what's around the corner.
So you disagree with my maturity comment at the beginning? You actually think it's still bandit country?
You know, I still do kind of feel like it's bandit country, and we're being led by a group of very young, very innovative people. And we're inside the business asking always, what's next? I know that at the moment we need to really start learning off some of the data that we have within the business, and that's the next step for every business. I think there still is disconnects, but no, next 12 months, you have to leave it with me.
Okay. Fleur, what about you?
The thing that I've noticed recently is more, it's almost like a bit of a step back in kind of production, the expectation of production value. So having been doing it since almost the beginning, and obviously started off very raw, and that's kind of the reason why people were watching. It's been very interesting to see over the past, especially 3 or 4 years, people coming into the space with super high production value, and that almost becoming a bit of a race for everybody to make content, and everyone's starting to look the same. I think that's almost going back a little bit in terms of everybody remembering why they started doing it in the first place, as opposed to it being a race to all create more professional looking content, more editorial looking content, people looking back at their own content and thinking, hang on, this is why we're not a magazine. This is why people are watching in the first place. So I think for me, you could tag that as authenticity, but not necessarily everybody has the same history as me. A lot of people started when that was expected anyway. But I think for me, that's something I've really noticed, is that the engagement and the interest and the performance is better when I'm producing content that is more natural and more kind of old school, as it were.
Laura, what about you?
I think it'll be interesting as audiences grow up, what platforms they go to, and how platforms introduce new formats like Insta Stories had a massive impact on the creativity within Insta and how people interact with that. So I think it'll be interesting to see how platforms evolve, how audiences evolve, and where audiences go. Are they going to start moving to places where there's, like Vero, that's jumped from 150,000 to 3 million because there's no advertising, there's no algorithm, there's no data mining. So I think it'd be interesting to see if we oversaturate influencer marketing and push audiences away to new cleaner platforms.
Okay. For what it's worth, I might chip in on this one, and that's just to look out for a different style of deal over the next 12 months. I think brands and agencies are going to be requesting less one-night stands and more long-term relationships. So I think that's the way that partnerships will go. So there you go. I'm going to bring this panel to a close. One thing that I will say to everybody is I'd always say register on the Social Circle platform, whether you're a creator or an agency or brand. But if you do today, then you get to win an iPad. So there you go. It's worth doing. Put IAB engage in the comments thing. I'd like to thank our panel, Danny, Lauren, Fleur. Laura, you've been awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks so much for listening. I hope that was good and insightful. Cheers.
Good.